Just before I start this video today, yes, I do have a heavy cold at the moment. I went to Stockholm earlier this week for an EA Summit. I wish I could tell you more about the trip, but at the moment I'm not allowed to. Maybe in the future I can let you guys know, but if in this video you hear more voice cracks than normal, then you know exactly why. I've got a horrible cold at the moment. On Tuesday, earlier this week, DICE released the April update for Battlefield 1. Now this is the third to last monthly update for the game, after it was recently confirmed that monthly updates would stop in June of 2018, and that's likely so that all the developers can move over to help the rest of the team finish up Battlefield 2018 for its launch in October. Now there's still a lot in the pipeline for Battlefield 1. Some of my videos over the last few days have shown you what is coming for us in the next few patches, and that's great for players of the game that are still playing. But a lot of people seem disappointed by this April patch, and some people have been calling it the most boring patch for the game so far. I do think it's worth refreshing our memory at this point, considering the last statement I just mentioned, that DICE has always maintained that these monthly updates for the game are to keep the game in the best shape possible and to provide more consistent content updates. But it seems that this April update is entirely about fixing issues and improving the game. And perhaps this is why people were so disappointed with it, and it's being one of the last few updates that we're going to see for the game. Maybe people think it's kind of like a waste of a patch if you're not going to include any content, especially when we know how much content is in the pipeline, and now there's only 2 more patches coming for the game for that content to be delivered. The list of bug fixes and changes for the April update is comparatively small when we look at previous monthly updates, and whilst all the points listed do indeed fix bugs or change things to make the game better, I'd argue really none of them are worth highlighting to you. They're important for sure, because they make things better, but they're not really headline features. Usually every single patch that's deployed to Battlefield 1 has some kind of highlight feature, some points that players have really noticed prior to the patch, and then have been remedied with the patch being dropped, or a brand new feature that people can use. But in all honesty, I don't really see any points in this list that we have today that are really worth highlighting to you. I mean, you can say that the fix for the Infiltrator Elite class's flare, now matching custom colorblind UI settings, is very important, especially if you're using custom colorblind settings, and the mid-round balancer being fixed, so it doesn't end up stacking one team with more than the maximum amount of allowed players for that game mode. But nothing really stands out to me as a major change for Battlefield 1, or at least some of the latest hot features spoke about in the community really being addressed in this patch. I can't see anything really to that description. This is actually a scenario where I think DICE misstepped with Battlefield 1 during its life cycle. If you remember, the game launched with DICE's old update policy, where they'd patch the game roughly once every 3 months. And DICE has done that since the days of Battlefield 3 as far as I can remember, and it may even go further back than that. And an update system that patches the game every quarter is perfectly acceptable for a lot of games, but the rise of live services among other big titles like Overwatch, Call of Duty, and potentially was being influenced by Battlefront 2 that was going to have a live service when it launched later in the year in 2017, DICE decided to switch to a monthly update system, and that would provide smaller updates to the players, but offering up something more frequently, which is I think what a lot of players actually wanted at that time. And this is something that, in the beginning, I supported heavily. It meant players would have more to expect from the game on a regular basis, and would likely offer up things for them to do in between those larger DLC drops that we knew were coming as part of the Premium Pass. What actually transpired when you look at the monthly update system in general across the span of time that we've had monthly updates was a little bit of a mess and some poor communication. I'm not trying to assign blame to anybody here, far from it, but the monthly update system did end up delivering content faster, which is great for players of the game, but often it introduced more bugs alongside stuff that was fixed, and players didn't really know when monthly updates were coming, so they couldn't sort of plan their gaming around when new content was dropping, or maybe even an update to fix something was going to drop. That's kind of important to a lot of players, especially people that don't have a lot of time to play games. Maybe they just pick up their controller on a Friday night and want to play a few rounds. If they don't know an update's coming, or if one's applied and it wasn't effectively communicated, which I don't believe a lot of these monthly updates were, then that can lead to a little bit of confusion from players. It's very difficult to predict when things are going to happen if there's no communication about when something's going to happen. I mentioned bugs being introduced. Who remembers the ricochet bug? That when you fired rocket gun shells at tanks, they would all ricochet off and do like 2 damage, even though you damn well knew you hit that tank square on. That was really, really annoying. And who remembers the player icon opacity issue back in October, where you couldn't tell if you were shooting at an enemy or a friendly because when you zoomed in, all the player icons just disappeared. Bugs like that are really, really annoying, and I think the monthly update system had something to do with that. I then think you also have an issue of the CTE being run alongside the production of monthly updates for Battlefield 1. The idea of the CTE is to allow DICE to get data on their upcoming patches before they hit the retail version of Battlefield 1, and you have an emphasis on the players providing feedback on new features, changes, and fixes. The CTE was, and still is, locked behind the premium paywall for Battlefield 1, and that instantly, drastically reduces the number of players out of the gate who can help DICE test things if they're willing to do that. The sales of Premium, and I have no evidence to back this up here, this is just my opinion, so take this with a pinch of salt, must have been much lower than with previous titles, and I can place that opinion purely down to the activity on the CTE in between updates. During Battlefield 4's life, the CTE on PC would be active every single day during the evenings, in the EU at least, with 2 or 3 servers being populated with players, choosing to play the CTE instead because it's the most up-to-date version of the game, crammed with new features, updates, and bug fixes. In Battlefield 1, that's not really the case. Once an update goes live there, you'll find healthy servers that evening with plenty of people playing, and potentially the evening after as well, but after about 2 or 3 days, the server's empty again and you'll be hard pushed to find a good, healthy, active community there playing on the servers in between patches. I think this affects DICE's ability to fix issues that might be raised by the community. If less people are playing the updates as they roll out, you have a less diverse playstyle across the people playing, and therefore obscure issues might end up being missed. Of course, I know there is a QA process as well, which should root out most of the bugs, if not all of them, but I feel that the CTE being less populated is leading to certain issues not being exposed. Again, I have no evidence to back this up, and I'm simply making a link between low CTE population and buggy patch updates for the main Battlefield 1 game, but it's a variable that was present in Battlefield 4 and in Battlefield 1, and I'm not so sure we had as many issues in Battlefield 4 as we do right now. Updates like this April one are vital for games like Battlefield 1, providing fixes to bugs, issues, and implementing changes to balance really helps the game remain as good as it can. So while it might seem like a very boring update because there's nothing really cool in there, it's an update that will benefit Battlefield 1 throughout May and June when the new content being worked on right now does actually arrive. My only hope is that DICE doesn't hold everything they're working on back until that June update. That might leave March, April and May as little more than bug fix updates for players to look forward to. And we've seen just how destructive massive waits between content has been for Battlefield 1 in the past. Look at the French DLC. It took 5 months to arrive, and the only other major update in between was Giant Shadow and the grenade launcher. And a lot of players left the game by the time the French DLC arrived. And then again, we had another 6-month wait between the French DLC and the Russian DLC. In between those, we did get the 2 night maps, but really I would argue those aren't the best maps from the DLC, and the major drop was in March, which people knew was the French DLC, and again we had more people leaving the game. Now sure, this period we're in right now, much lower profile for Battlefield 1, but I'm hoping DICE still realises there are plenty of players out there that are waiting for this new content to arrive. Here's to hoping then that the grass is a little bit greener on the other side for content coming in the next couple of patches for Battlefield 1. We've got potentially 7 new weapons to look forward to and 8 new weapon variants that don't have a release date, but we do know that Shock Operations is coming in June. 5 maps that haven't featured operations before, single map operations. So there is plenty to look forward to, it's just we don't know when most of it is going to be arriving. But thank you very much for watching today. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. Make sure you subscribe for more content like this and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. But until next time, my name is Westie and I'll catch you guys in the next video.